fool.
Nice. Big timer.
Man, this is one of those games that could have only came out in the 2000s because the whole concept would just not work today. Yeah, let's take the hottest rappers on the Def Jam label and create a whole grimy ass fighting game around them. Sounds pretty wild, but the results ended up being low-key one of the best fighting games of all time. Seriously, for a game that was probably made just to promote some artists, it really didn't have to go this hard. What's funny is that this game was most likely made by a bunch of Canadian and Japanese nerds that don't know shit about rap. The fact that this is an EA game too is tripping me out. Like, the tone and look of this game seemed more up the alley of Rockstar at the time, but I guess this was back when EA didn't always play it safe. But back to my opening statement on why a game like this wouldn't work today is twofold. For one, fighting games of this style are no longer popular. Tell me, when's the last time you played a wrestling game? Exactly. And two, hip-hop culture is drastically different now than it was back then. A lot of the hottest rappers now aren't really these hyper machismo street dudes. A lot of rappers now either lean more into flamboyance or everyman consciousness, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, creating a grimy ass fighting game with these guys probably wouldn't hit the same. Seeing these hardcore rappers with Timberland boots and do-rags performing Naruto moves on each other is an unforgettable aesthetic, let me tell you. Crazy thing is that this is not even the only game that did this, as this game is actually a sequel to Def Jam Vendetta that came out 1 year prior. Reason no one talks about that game is simply because this one is better in every way. Even though the story of this game takes place directly after that one, the events of that game luckily don't have anything to do with this one. Speaking of which,
That's why I'm the champ, bitch.
Oh, snap, D-Mob. Yo, we thought you was...
Thought I was what? Arrested?
Who this?
This is the guy who was helping me get home while you two clowns were sitting around playing video games.
Hey.
So Fight for New York takes place immediately after Vendetta, where crime lord D-Mob is headed to jail for all the heinous shit he did in that game. However, he's freed up pretty quickly when an SUV rams the back of a police car he's in. The driver in question is the player character, who soon joins D-Mob's crew and starts fighting in New York's underground for him. For the rest of the game, the player fights against various fighters from Crow's crew to regain clubs and territory across the city. Surprisingly, it's not that straightforward though, as there are some twists and turns here that I'll get into later.
The heat's on now, Daddy.
Bow down to the champ, chump.
So for those that actually played this game back in the day, you probably noticed that there's this weird ghosting effect around the characters, and that's because I had to emulate this shit, and this is just a weird side effect of all that. Hey man, it's not my fault they never ported this game over to modern consoles. I suspect it's because EA doesn't want to deal with all the licensed songs in this game. Luckily, this glowy effect isn't so distracting to where it ruins the visuals that much. Apparently the GameCube version doesn't have this issue, but that version is lesser in other ways, such as one voice line for the main character, missing songs, lesser stage details, and worst of all, more muffled audio. And all of this isn't even an emulation issue, but just how that version of the game was back then. Yeah, even back in those days, you were better off not getting third-party games on Nintendo hardware. All that aside though, this game doesn't look half bad for a 20-year-old game. It actually looks better than a lot of the actual wrestling games at the time. The character models are pretty damn detailed, and the faces especially are pretty spot on to how these guys actually look in real life. Also, despite going for a realistic look, they're pretty expressive too. Animations in game are mad quick and snappy to the point where it feels like it's skipping through moves sometimes. Part of the reason that this game has aged so well though in the visuals department is due to its setting. A lot of the fights either take place at night or in these dimly lit clubs, which means a lot of that PlayStation 2 graininess is hidden with selective lighting. Not that they needed to utilize such techniques, because I'm pretty sure this game had a big ass budget. It had to with all these celebrities voicing their parts. Yeah, they actually got most of these celebrities to voice themselves in game, and it all actually sounds pretty good. I sound shocked, but I probably shouldn't, since all these rappers are essentially acting as themselves.
You can't stop With fists like these, I don't even gotta pack no heat.
Let's see if you're stinking ass to stack up to me.
Hey, yo, Thun, the word is out. You about to lose.
Can't stop me, son. I'ma dance around you all night long.
It's quick.
You think you could freestyle with Bless?
You're stalling. Time is money. Let's go.
Hey, yo, you sure you want some of this? Dead man walking over here.
It's still commendable that they went this far with it though. They could have easily gotten imitation voice actors, but instead they went all in on the immersion. When you get your ass beat by someone like Omar Epps, it feels all the more visceral since it's actually him.
I took it to your body. I took it to your face. You had no chance, chump.
Funny how realistic this game chooses to be in this aspect while being totally ridiculous in the gameplay aspect. I'm not getting into mechanics just yet, but can we appreciate how over the top the moves in this game are? Some of these moves put WWE All-Stars to shame with how exaggerated they are.
It could be over.
Yeah, no one's doing that in real life, but obviously that's part of the charm of this game. The aesthetic of street dudes in Tim boots doing kung fu flips and kicks and shit is not one you see too often. It's like the developers built this game from the ground up to be played to Wu-Tang records. Something I honestly wish was more in this game. We got Method Man tracks, but that's about it. Wait, wasn't Ghostface on the label at the time? You're telling me you couldn't get any of the joints from the Pretty Tony record? Anyway, the music in this game is appropriately filled with songs by the artists in the game. Fits the feel of the game, but even besides that, these are some catchy tunes in general. Can't say I'm too big into this era of hip-hop, at least not the mainstream, but they still chose some bangers regardless. Damn, y'all got Outkast in the soundtrack, but couldn't put Andre or Big Boy in the game? Well, I guess it wouldn't make that much sense since they are ATL artists, but then again, they do have West Coast artists in this game, so what the hell? Anyway, another thing I really like about this game is the sound effects. It's one of the reasons why every attack in this game feels so damn good to pull off. All the meaty pops and cracks has every move feeling all the more painful.
I ain't no time for the weak now.
There's a lot more coming.
And after getting hit with a devastating move, sometimes characters twitch on the ground and shit, which is both disturbing and hilarious. You can even see the battle damage on characters after the fight too, which is a cool detail.
You just got owned, bitch.
Alright, so my character's dripped up, I got a fighting style, let's take the city. So if you played any WWE game at this time, then you almost already know how this game feels. You beat the asses of your opponents with various types of strikes and grabs, except instead of pinning your opponent, you have to knock them the fuck out. Sounds pretty straightforward until you see all the different ways you can go about this. The two things that really separate this game from others like it is the use of the environment around you and all the different types of fighting styles that are present. Yeah, the crowd around you aren't just set dressing outlookers. These motherfuckers will actually get involved if a fighter's knocked into them. Everything from holding you down to smashing your head with a weapon to throwing you back out there. The crowds in this game are a bunch of savages, and utilizing them is definitely incentivized as they do mad damage. The same applies to other environments such as gates and walls and shit. Get hit into those things and it leaves you open for a lot of damage. It also greatly increases this momentum meter here, which when full allows you to perform a blaze move, which is one of those crazy ass special moves that defy logic. I mentioned that the name of the game is to knock your opponent out, but it's not as simple as lowering their health bar. You gotta get their shit into the danger zone and then hit them with a devastating blow. A heavy grab, a haymaker, a weapon strike, or using the environment will do the trick. Along with the brutality of all this is all the different types of fighting styles in this game. Street fighting, kickboxing, general martial arts, submissions, and standard wrestling are all different styles of whoop ass that characters can inflict in this game. All have a variety of different movesets and approaches, and the coolest part is that you can equip 3 of these styles on your character. Want to be Jet Li but with the mad skills of King? Well, this game lets you do just that. Allowing up to 3 styles on your character allows for a lot of different moveset permutations, since you not only have a set of quick grabs, but also a set of heavy grabs that are more devastating. This is one of the things that makes this game highly replayable, as there's a lot of ways you can make your character into the ultimate fighter. Combine this with all the brutal environmental maneuvers and quick animation and you got one hell of a combat system, man. 1 minute you're slugging it out in the middle of an arena, to getting your head smashed in on a wall, to jumping off high spots like Jeff Hardy. It's fast, it's frantic, and more importantly dynamic. You can counter practically every grab and strike by timing your block at the right time, and it doesn't take much to swing the momentum of a fight. This is one of those games where you really gotta be on top of the AI because any breathing room will have them turning into straight bullies, at least most of them. The tendencies of the AI are character dependent and they're all over the damn place. You got guys like Fat Joe that grab you every 2 seconds, guys like Massa that like to spam strikes, and then you got guys like Scarface that like to block everything you throw at them. Suffice to say, this is one of those games where the difficulty spikes are very apparent, especially in the beginning of the story mode where your character's weak as shit. Man, let me tell y'all how I was stuck fighting Ice-T for like 45 minutes, and that's because that asshole is not only fast as hell, but he's one of those submission spammers that can't keep his hands off you.
You're nothing but a punk, your daddy's a punk, and your mama's a bitch.
One of the reasons why I chose to team up with him during that tag team gauntlet. Of course, if this game is already this amped with one-on-one bouts, you can imagine that things get pretty chaotic with 4 people on the floor. Anyone that had this game on the GameCube back in the day with 4 controllers can testify. Those sessions were legendary. Unfortunately, that's a bygone era, but even just facing the computer in these still captures most of the magic. Despite being a good time though, this game would definitely not appear at no Evo because it's unbalanced as shit. Yeah, as you make your way through New York fighting a bunch of different guys, you do start to notice that some fighting styles and stats are better than others. If you're a kickboxer or a martial artist, you can hold off a wrestler or a submission type of guy pretty easily by spamming strikes. Especially when you get your speed up, these dudes can't get any offense in. It's definitely the most important stat to try to get up early on, especially when your character is weak as shit. Dev points, which are points that you earn after each fight to improve your stats, are pretty hard to come by in the beginning. Notice that it was way better to try and improve my character's stats and unlock another fighting style as fast as possible rather than buying new blaze moves. Speaking of which, it's kind of weird how this game gives you so many options on which of these blaze moves you can equip, but you can't equip any of your standard moves for your character. Yeah, this is one of the things that the WWE got right when it comes to the customization. Even in the old games, when you create a character, you can choose every single move in your character's moveset, and it just makes your created character more unique. Here, you can't even do that, and when you take on another fighting style, moves are just randomly applied to your character. It's not that big of an issue, but it is pretty jarring when your character just abruptly switches fighting styles mid-fight. Game? I'm pretty sure that's more than just a knockout. For as ridiculous as the gameplay is, it's kind of funny how serious the story in this game takes itself. In a lot of ways, it plays out like a hood film from the era. You got our main guy coming up in the world trying to make a name for himself with a bunch of haters getting in the way of that. Usually it's pretty hard to hate Snoop Dogg, but he's a total scumbag in this game. You end up feeling actual animosity towards him after certain events, and being able to whoop his ass in the end is way more satisfying than it should be. I guess spoilers for this, but come on, it's pretty obvious early on that Snoop Dogg is going to be the final boss in this game. They got one betrayal for a character that you can see coming from a mile away, but there's another betrayal that happens that's a little bit more surprising. Love how for the second one, the character's whole demeanor changes. Although for this one, this game does a story cliche I usually hate where a character is being blackmailed and forced to go against their friends, but they don't tell their friends what's happening, even though they could probably just get them out of that situation if they just told them. In this game, that happens where once a character lets the others know what's happening, they just go and deal with the blackmailer. That aside, I did enjoy the story being told. It helps that the voice actors actually took the material seriously with convincing performances. But also, all the story stuff appropriately takes a backseat to the fighting. There's some stretches in this game where you'll do like 10 fights before seeing a cutscene. Most of the other characters give their thoughts on what's happening through voicemails on your phone. Yeah, fucking Sidekick, remember when those phones were the shit? It's a pretty unintrusive way to inform the player of their impact after each fight. Makes way for the shit that we're all here for, which is how it should be. So yeah, that's Def Jam Fight for New York. Low-key one of the funnest fighting games on the PlayStation 2 that I'll probably never get a remaster. If you're into hip-hop and like over-the-top fighting games, then there's really no reason not to check this out. This game is simultaneously a love letter to both hip-hop and wrestling, and it's still unique to this day because of it. Name me another game where you could put Method Man and Redman in a tag match against Mobb Deep, or have Busta Rhymes go toe-to-toe against Henry Rollins in a cage match. That's right, you can't. Unfortunately, this game is stuck on 6th gen hardware, so it is pretty tough to recommend. Anyway, that's all I got to say about this one. If you like this video, I got plenty of more like it on the channel. Help this video out in the algorithm by doing the usual stuff. And until next time.